Hi there, I am Andrew Lasch, and I'll be teaching your son or daughter science this year. I teach physics, honors physics, and physical science at Greendale. In the past, I've also taught AP Physics, Principles of Engineering, and a little bit of geometry. If you ever need to reach me, you can get to me at andrew.lash@greendaleschools.org. A little bit about myself. I am actually a Greendale graduate. I graduated in 2007 from Greendale. I went to UW-Madison, got a degree in, it's called AMEP. It is just Applied Math, Mechanical Engineering, and Physics. From Madison, I went to Edgewood to get certified to teach. At Edgewood, I got certifications in math, physics, and just general science. And then I have been at Greendale ever since 2013, so this is the start of year 7 for me. First up, we'll talk about physical science. If you are here for physics, you can jump down at the bottom on the timeline to physics where it's labeled, but we'll get started with physical science. So this class is a lead-in to chemistry and physics. We will start with scientific method, then we're moving on to energy topics, and then we'll talk about motion, and we'll finish up the semester with atoms. The grade in this class is 20% homework, and that's just they'll get a unit packet. So it's just like a worksheet related to the things we do in class or the videos they watch when they're virtual. There will also be 40% of their grade is labs. We'll usually do like one lab per unit. It'll look a little different this year, but we'll still do labs. And then assessments. So that's just a pretty standard unit test that'll count for the last 40% of their grade. We do those at the end of every unit, so that's every 2 or 3 weeks. In between there, some of the longer units will do quizzes, but usually expect to see a test in Power School like every 2 or 3 weeks. This year, in terms of work expectations, there's in-person expectations and virtual expectations. The in-person expectations, make sure students are bringing their packets because in class we're going to be doing notes. We'll practice some of the skills that they're learning. So it's really important. It's all self-contained in their packet. Just make sure they're bringing their packet to class because that has everything they need to do in it. We'll also be doing labs. Labs this year, they'll be mostly individual. Where we can, we'll try and get some partner labs, but we got to keep the kids separated. So mostly individual labs. We will usually do an alternating schedule. So we only have a few students in the lab area at a time, just to make sure everybody is maintaining 6 feet of distance. When we are in person, that'll also be a good chance to ask questions from any of the virtual day stuff. So just make sure students are ready to ask questions if they do have issues while they're at home. As far as the virtual expectations, there'll usually be one assignment per day. It'll usually be a video and then a worksheet to practice the skills that were in the video. In terms of turning that in, since we just need to take attendance for those virtual activities, students will need to submit proof of work on Google Classroom. And the way to do that, we've practiced it already in class, is just take a picture. So with their Chromebook, with a camera, take a picture of their packet, upload it to Google Classroom just so I can see that they're doing their work. On our virtual days, so usually Wednesdays, on those virtual days, just make sure the students expect at least for a couple minutes to check in with me, and then I'll explain what they need to do that day. So usually we won't go the whole time. Usually it'll be some introduction, some notes, something, and then they'll be working on what they need to do the rest of that time. To be successful in class, everything we do this year has a video on Google Classroom, so just encourage your student to watch the videos on Google Classroom. It'll be good for review, even if they were in class that day. They can go home at night and rewatch the notes, see if they missed anything. When they're ever going to be absent, they can use that, go back, see what they missed on that day. So everything's recorded this year, so it should be really easy with absences to make up work. Also, I try to encourage the students or remind the students of this. There's a difference between just having the video on and actually watching the video. So make sure they are actually watching the video and not doing something else while just having the video on in the background. That won't be very conducive to learning. Lastly, biggest tip, make sure they are seeking extra help. So that can be in person with questions when they see me in class. It can be through email. On those Wednesdays, we'll set up some office hours type things where students can just drop in and ask questions, but asking questions, especially this year, really important. If you have any additional questions about class, please email me at andrew.lash@greendaleschools.org. All right, and here is physics and honors physics. So in this class, we will be covering motion and then forces. And historically, we've had a semester project. So you can see a picture here that is our semester project from 2 years ago. It's usually some sort of projectile launcher. This year, our project's obviously going to have to look a little different. And we'll cover that once we get closer to the end of the semester. In terms of grading for this class, this is the biggest change. We do standards-based grading in physics. So PowerSchool is going to look a little different in physics. It displays learning targets instead of individual assignments. So for example, instead of a student saying on worksheet 3, they got a 72%, now it's going to say on standard 1.4, they got a 3 out of 4. And we'll see what that looks like in a second. The important things to remember, 3 is what we're aiming for, so 3 is good. 4 is as good as you can go, so that 4 is like perfect, but 3s are good. So you're looking for 3s. That's what we're aiming for in this class. Besides being standards-based, we are also mastery-based. So that means students can reassess on these standards and they can keep trying until they get the grade that they want with no penalty for any low grades initially. So the whole goal of this is that students can keep trying until they prove that they learn the thing, and then their grade only reflects that they know that topic, not that they tried a bunch to get there. So no penalty for trying, just keep trying and get the grade you want. At the end, they will still get a final letter grade, and we'll see what that looks like in PowerSchool. So PowerSchool, like I said, won't be individual assignments. If you look down at the bottom here, it says standard 1.1, 1.2, and so on. Those kind of take the place of traditional like worksheets and tests and stuff like that. So a worksheet, a quiz, a lab, all of those might combine to make up the standard 1.1 grade, and that gets reported here. You'll also notice the yellow asterisks on there. That means they don't count towards the final grade in PowerSchool. So if we see with grades actually in, if you look down on the bottom, this might be a little jarring, but like if you look at standard 1.4, it says 2 out of 4, 50%. PowerSchool automatically counts that as an F. It does not count that way. If we could turn it off, we would. So ignore anything where you see a yellow asterisk. What's important is the out of 4 grade. So on standard 1.4, for example, they got a 2 out of 4. Yes, that is a 50% on the PowerSchool scale, but in our scale, that actually equates to a C. So the important grade that you look for is right up top. You look for the term grade. That is their final grade in the class. And then each standard grade, all you're looking for is that score out of 4. 3s and 4s are what we're aiming for. 2s, not quite, but that's still not nearly as bad as it looks in PowerSchool when it says 50% F. So ignore that. Just look at the final term grade. That's their final grade in the class. And then just remember 3s and 4s good, 1s and 2s getting there. If you see any 0s, that's something to be a little concerned about, but usually it'll be mostly 2s, 3s, and 4s. If you look up at the description on PowerSchool, there's a much longer explanation of how all this works. You can just follow the links there, and you can see everything they do. So like I said, standard 1.1 might be a worksheet, a quiz, and a lab that makes up that grade. If you want to see all of those individual grades, there's a separate spreadsheet you can go to that is the last link on the PowerSchool description. When you look at the term long grade or the semester long grade, so the term 1 grade, right here, that student got a B, so their semester grade is just a B. Next semester or next term, they might get a C, and then their semester grade drops down to a C. The way we do this is that the term grade is just what was their grade for those first 6 weeks or for that term. But then the term 2 grade includes all of their work for the whole semester at that point. So that's why the semester grade just reflects the most recent term. Then if we see at the end of the semester, it might look something like this, where, hey, they reassessed on some of those low scoring standards they had during term 2. So now their grade went up to a B+. So you might see the final grade fluctuate a lot. Just remember, they can always reassess on stuff until they get the grade that they want. So if we look at this student's whole semester, they got a B and then a C the second term. Those are just kind of snapshots. Here's how they did during those 6 weeks, but they don't go into the final grade. So if we just look, the final grade takes their entire semester of work. The term grades that you see in PowerSchool are just snapshots for those 6 weeks. In terms of converting all of our standard grades to a final letter grade, we use this scale. So you just basically take the average. The one thing to note is that we have minimum cutoffs. So if you look at student A here, their average is a 3.6 and their final grade is an A, whereas student B, their average is also a 3.6, but their grade is a C. If you look, that's because of standard 1.2. They have a 1 on that standard, so that shows they don't know it very well. And in order to get an A in this class, they need to make sure they prove they're at least proficient in every standard. So all student B would need to do to get their grade up to an A is just say, hey, Mr. Lasch, I would like to reassess on standard 1.2. They take another short quiz on that. If their grade goes up to a 3 or a 4 on that standard, then their semester grade goes up to an A as well. So just remember, as you're looking at this, 1s and 2s, that'll kind of hold your grade back because it shows they don't necessarily know all the standards at a proficient level. Once they get up to proficient, then their grade will improve. So all that student would need to do is just show they know 1.2, and then their grade goes up to an A right away. In terms of our expectations for class, when we are in person, that'll be just notes and practice that we're doing. We'll do our labs in person, any questions from those virtual days, and then that's when we will do our assessments and reassessments. For my virtual section, we're just doing all of that, but online through Google Meet. On the virtual days, there will usually be the pacing is like one standard every 2 days. So the first day will be like a video. They do a little practice. The second day, they'll check their work, make sure they know what they're doing. Work needs to get submitted to Google Classroom just so I know they're doing their virtual assignments. And then on our virtual days, usually Wednesdays, that'll be when we have a short check-in. So just plan on, at a bare minimum, just like a short 5-minute thing right at the start. I'll re-explain what we're doing. That's our attendance for the day. And then we might break up and do a bunch of different stuff on that Wednesday. So sometimes we'll be all together. Sometimes I'll split them up into smaller groups. Sometimes I might just meet with a handful of students. But I will always explain that at the start of those days on Wednesday. To be successful in this class, just make sure we're thoughtfully attempting all problems on the homework. They don't need to get 100% on the homework because it's about learning and practicing those skills. So just make sure they are thoughtfully attempting each thing. So that looks like highlighting or underlining or circling important words in the problem, identifying variables, writing down an equation they might want to use. Even if they get stuck, at least then we can see how far they got on the problem. When we are doing activities in class or we have Google Meets, just make sure students are an active participant. So it's really easy to just have the video off on the side and then actually be doing something else. But just make sure you're actively watching the video, participating when we do like group work, stuff like that. Don't be afraid to ask for help, especially this year. It's going to be really important. So email me, ask me in person, whatever. Just make sure they're asking for help. And the whole goal of this class, the reason we made this switch is that we don't want to punish trying. So we don't want to punish one bad test score early on. As long as students keep trying, they can get the grade that they want. So just keep trying. And if you have any questions on this, please email me at my email, andrew.lash@greendaleschools.org.